Welcome to the Jay Tyner Show, where we discuss all things wealth management and retirement planning. And as always, the goal of our team here at Semmax Financial Group is to help you focus more on your life and less on your money. Now, as a reminder, check with your current advisor, planner, CPA, and read our disclosure in the video description below. Subscribe to this channel if you want to stay up to date on all of our new content. And by the way, if you have questions or need a 15-minute free consultation, please visit semmax.com or call 336-856-0080.
Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about vesting. I'm joined by Mr. Michael as well as Mr. Larry. I'm Matt. And like I said, vesting. Now, I was in a wedding and we all wore these lovely vests. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about financial vesting, which makes no sense if you don't spend a little time digging into it. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, with vesting, how does it work? Right? So with an employee, each individual owns or will vest a percentage of their retirement plan or benefit options, stock options, etc., until eventually you're 100% vested. At that point, if you were to leave the company, you can take all of those funds with you. They're entirely yours. But that vesting schedule can take a little bit of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into some of the different types of vesting. And to start off, just because I feel like that was an introduction, but it doesn't necessarily explain it that well. Do you mind just giving us an example of vesting and just tell me what it is?
Sure. Basically, vesting is ownership. So if John has 3 years with a company, he's been contributing to a 401k. The company might have a 3-year vesting schedule, and maybe he gets a third of that every year vested, and that means the match that the employer put into his account becomes his. So It's just simple ownership.
So beyond just a match on, let's say, a 401k vesting, there's also stock vesting. And stock vesting, there's a couple different ways of doing it. There's 3 main types. There's incentive stock options, there's non-qualified stock options, and then there's restricted stock options. So Larry, why don't you take us through what an ISO is?
All right, Matt. Well, an ISO pretty much is what it's called. It's an incentive stock option. And it gives the employee the opportunity to buy stock at a later date at a fixed price. So the price would be set and the employee would have the option to buy it at a later date. Now, there are some caveats that are involved here. The price could be higher, it could be lower, depending upon, where it's set.
So say March 30th, the company comes to you and says, Larry, in 6 months, you can buy our stock price at $20 a share. And 6 months from now, you get a choice. It might be $40 a share, but it could be $15.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
So it could go either way. There's also the concern that you have to keep that stock for 1 full year before you get the opportunity to buy the stock. Before you're vested in the stock.
So you bought it, but then you have to hold on to it.
You have to hold on to it for a year.
So you can't buy it, it's at $40 a share and immediately sell.
Correct.
Okay. Now, how does this differ from an NSO? So that's an ISO. What's an NSO?
Right. They're similar, but an NSO is a non-qualified stock option. And so these are usually provided as a part of your employment package, compensation package from your employer. They typically don't have very good tax favorable treatment. You pay taxes when you buy or exercise the option and when you sell the shares of the non-qualified stock option.
Awesome. Now, the third option here is an RSU, a restricted stock units. Now, the thing with restricted stock units is you're not purchasing those. In both of these previous examples, you're actually purchasing shares. In this case, the company is just giving you those shares, but you don't redeem them until a future date. So you have to be vested before you receive those shares. So the company says, well, I'm going to give this to you, but you can't actually have it yet. You got to stick around for a while before you can have it. And so the next thing I want to talk about is vesting periods, because they differ. There are different types of vesting periods. So, Michael, how long is a vesting period?
Normally they're about 3 to 5 years. Some I've seen as long as 6. Others are immediate, which we'll talk about in a moment. But 3 to 5 years is a normal kind of time range that the employer is trying to keep you tied to them to get fully vested with the company.
And so there's different types of those periods and how it works as well. And I know one of them is called cliff vesting. Mm-hmm. So this isn't cliff diving. So what is cliff vesting?
Right. Cliff vesting is where they may say, okay, you're not gonna have any vested amount until you've worked for 3 years. But then you're fully vested after 3 years. So if you left at 2 years or 2 years and 9 months, you wouldn't receive any of the the vested amounts.
So you could almost think about this as like golden handcuffs, where you've got
Right.
this benefit, but you got to stick it out until, or you get nothing. You get none of it.
Right.
Now, how does that differ from a graded vesting schedule?
Good question, Matt. The way a graded vesting schedule works is the employee is vested over a period of time. And as the period of time grows, their vesting grows. So let's look at an example of a 4-year graded vesting option. During the first year, from the time they start up until their anniversary date, they're 0% vested. But as soon as they hit that 1 year, they're 25% vested. The same thing goes from day one after year one all the way up to year two, 25% vested until they hit year two, and then 50, and then of course the third would be 75, and the fourth they would be fully vested after their 4 full years.
Interesting. So I know the third option here is my personal favorite. It's immediate vesting, which is to say,
Right.
if I give you something, that's yours. Or if I receive something, that's mine. That's immediate vesting. I think that's what we are seeing more and more frequently. But there are these other types, and I think it's important to maybe touch briefly on why. Why does vesting exist at all? Well, really, one of the reasons is to try and retain employees. Now, I would argue that if someone is telling me you've got $75,000 worth of our stock, but you can't have it until September, I'm probably going to stick around until September, right? But I will just say this when it comes to vesting, and this is my philosophy, and I think it's Semmax's philosophy as well, is if the only reason you're staying at a job is because you're waiting for those shares to redeem, all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. I think you're much better off having a situation where you're working somewhere that you enjoy and you're attracted. You're not being obligated or coerced into it. If you have questions around your vesting schedule, I think that's something that is important to talk to your advisor about, because there are different ways you can do it, and that can have an impact on your retirement. It can also have an impact on whether or not you're laid off versus whether you voluntarily leave a firm. So I do think when it comes to vesting, there's a lot of nuances, there's a lot of details. It's important to understand your situation, and if you have questions about it, you're welcome to reach out to us. We'd be glad to help. For Michael, for Larry, I'm Matt. Have a wonderful day.